Hello and welcome to the Imperfect Person podcast. I am your host, Tori Aletto, and today's topic is feeling seen and heard, the need to be seen. So, my most popular post to date is a post that reads, instead of saying, I'm proud of you, consider this. I noticed how hard you worked and I'm inspired by you. I noticed how patient you were, and I'm grateful for you. I noticed how kind you spoke, and I love that about you. And the post goes on to share my experience growing up and how often my mother, with the best intentions, said things to me like, I'm so proud of you, or I knew you can do it. And these were really nice things, but something always felt empty when I was receiving it. And I remember one particular moment where I worked so tirelessly at something. Like I worked my butt off at something. Actually, I should probably share what that something is. I went from, having a C average and barely trying in high school to having almost a 4.0 and graduating college in 3 years. Like I did a complete turnaround. And for anybody who knows this, knows it's not even just about actually applying yourself and studying, which was clearly something that I did, but it was the amount, like I had to teach myself how to study for the first time in college. I had to stay home, like I was behind, and there were so many mental, emotional pieces that came into this, and I worked my butt off. And I remember my mom's response to me was, "Oh yes, I knew you can do it." And she was saying something again, nice, really nice, but it fell short for me. So when I was thinking about this, now that I'm a mother, I noticed the same instincts that my mother had, where my daughter does something and I just want to say, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. And recently I was laying in bed with my daughter and she, had a really hard day and worked through it. And I said to her, I'm so proud of you for today. And I could just tell it didn't land. It didn't sit. She didn't really want to hear it. She kind of turned and was over it. And then I remembered myself and sort of connected these dots. Like, wow, these statements can feel so empty, even with the best intentions. And when I really sat and thought of why, and really what we're trying to do when we say them, is we're trying to make someone feel seen, right? Like, I'm so proud of you. I want you to know that I see you. I know how hard you worked, all that. But the problem with that is that in order to see someone and attune to them, it requires energy, it requires presence, it requires a little bit of work, right? Instead of just saying something like, I'm so proud of you, it's right there. I really had to think of, well, this is what I noticed, and really pay attention to her, not only to notice it, but also to articulate it to her. It takes energy. But on the receiving end, that energy is what we crave. We crave the true essence of somebody sitting in our world, even for a few moments, and seeing us, seeing our struggle. If my mom turned around to me and said, instead of I knew you can do it, I saw how hard you worked every night. I'm blown away by that. It would have made me feel so seen. Where I know her intentions were good. And I know I don't hold anything against her in the same way that, when I say that to my own daughter, I don't hold it against me, but it just gets you really thinking, how do we meet this true need of attunement? How do we actually make people feel seen? But what does it actually require from us? We clearly all want to be seen ourselves, but it's also our job to see. And the biggest challenge that I think on a personal level to see somebody else is it requires you. And oftentimes we're tired, we're exhausted, we're over it. We've been doing things all day. We're busy, busy, busy people. I just want to tell you, I appreciate you and go to sleep. But the challenge with that is we are really, really missing the target when it comes to connection. And if we really spend time, even 2 minutes, if we really spend time in someone else's world and someone else's, you know, struggle and someone else's hardships or whatever they're going through, if we spend time in their space and see them as much as we could, right? With limits, of course, but as much as we could, and we can articulate that to them, it meets such a deep need and it makes you feel so connected to someone. And I think that's one of the things, honestly, that people come in holding the most pain around when they come to therapy. That desire to truly feel seen is one of the biggest collective wounds I think we all have, because it is such a difficult thing to see. I have to be aware. I have to be regulated. I have to be noticing. I have to be present. And there's so much in life that pulls us away from that skill set, right? In all roles, whether you're a mother, whether you're in college, it doesn't matter where you are. In all roles, there's so much pulling us away from that presence, and also on the other end of that, we're very used to being in our own experience. It's hard to see the other. It's hard to take time and see the other. It's like a skill. It's something you have to do. The way that I like to look at this is often when I'm craving something, right? So for instance, let's think of my marriage. When I'm like, you know what? I wish that my husband would come upstairs and tell me how much he appreciates me for doing what I did today. While that is valid and important, what I often do in those moments is I take time and I spend time on him. It's like a backwards way of meeting this need. So not only do I want to be seen, but I also want to be the seer. I want to see. And I think of him and I think of his day and what that must be like. And I really try to just spend some time in his world. And then I articulate that to him in a very genuine and honest way. And I can see him light up because he's like, wow, you get me, you see me. I think when you do that, when you take that on, I think it feeds your value into the relationship. Instead of walking around and being like, no one appreciates me, you are living your value. Because I notice when I do that with my husband, he'll often meet me back or he'll do the same thing at some point, because we're feeding the relationship with attunement and connection. There's a seeing a human beyond the relationship, right? And I do this with my children too, or I try. And I promise you this, there's nothing perfect about it. There are many times where my daughter shows me something. I'm like, that's great. A very generic answer. But what I try to remember is there are moments and there are vital, important moments to truly see her or to see my son or to see, anyone in my life. And anytime we take or carve time out to do that and articulate it, it really, really meets an incredibly important need. And I just point all of this out because I think sometimes we get so desperate to get our own needs met. We also forget that we're meeting the needs of others, particularly in marriage, right? Like we're getting, oh, why doesn't he do this? Why doesn't she do that? When really, are we living that? Are we doing that? How do we fuse that or bring that into our relationship, into our space, that connection between? Because that's what makes people feel connected. There's a light that goes off when we feel seen. It's such an important, deep need. And I think, again, while most of us have the best intentions when we say nice things, I had a couple comments on that post were like, oh, my parents never said that. I would have died for them to say I'm proud of me. And that's valid. I get it. But what you're saying is what I'm saying. It's just a different version of it is you wanted to be seen and that would have done it for you. Whereas for me, I heard that, but the energy around it wasn't on me. It wasn't focused on me. It wasn't really seeing me. It felt more like that blanket kind of statement stuff, Again, just reiterating, I don't think that was my mom's intention, but that's how it felt. And that's what's really important. How do things feel? It's that feeling. When we're really attuned to someone, there's like a warmth around them. It's like the feeling you get in therapy from your therapist, right? Being a therapist is a job of attunement. I'm fully attuned to my clients, and hopefully your therapist is fully attuned to you. And for the first time in some people's lives, it's the first time they've been attuned to. It's incredible. But it's energy. It's a focus. It's a time. It's sort of like a boundary within myself. Like, I'm not worried about me. I'm actually fully focused on you, but it creates warmth and connection, and a need is met. And in relationships, it creates intimacy. And in friendships, it creates closeness and intimacy. And with child and parent, there's a level of, seeing that is so deeply important to a child. It's so deeply important. So I think that's why that post is my most popular. And I don't think when I wrote it, I even thought it would be. It was just something that crossed my mind, and I like to write my own experiences because I had to believe that people felt that way too. That even though things were being said, that they weren't being felt. That's a big difference. Do I feel you? We harp on like, don't be on your phone when you're talking to me, or don't be this. But what we're really asking from one another is, I want to feel you with me. I want to feel that presence. I want us to be engaged on a level where there's that feeling of safety and love and warmth. That's what we all crave. And I think that's what we're all kind of after. So I guess something to think about in this podcast is not only noticing the needs that you have, which are valid and important and real, but noticing how you live those needs, those values for other people. Because I always know when I feel a lack of appreciation, there's something really beautiful about me attuning and appreciating other people. And again, it doesn't take away a hard conversation of, hey, do you see me? Because I need that. It doesn't take that away. It just allows you to live it differently. It just allows you to infuse that instead of always speaking of what's lacking. I hope this gets you thinking a little bit. When it comes to kids, I hope it really makes you think, like, what do you really want them to know? What do you want them to notice? And if you spend time on that moment and speak it to them, I really do believe, even if they kind of roll their eyes or maybe not fully pay attention, it really sits. It really lands. It really meets such a vital need. And maybe because I do believe this is one of our biggest wounds collectively, this will be some of our biggest healing collectively. Let me know what you think. I am working hard to get my website up and running. So if you are looking for any past webinars, they will all be available so soon. I'm hoping by next week they will be up and running, and there's a lot to choose from. So I'm excited to talk a little bit more about them. And I will see you on Instagram. Find me at NMyTherapist. Thanks, guys.